I discovered my retirement savings were gradually disappearing for months. After checking bank statements, I realized someone had been making unauthorized withdrawals. When I confronted my bank, they revealed the withdrawals were made using my card and PIN. Devastated and confused, I decided to secretly change banks and redirect my retirement funds to a new account. Returning home after finalizing the changes, I found my son-in-law Mark waiting in my living room, red-faced and trembling with rage, demanding an explanation for what I had done. I never imagined at 68 years old I would be starting over financially. After losing my husband Frank to cancer 3 years ago, I had settled into a quiet but comfortable retirement in our modest suburban home in Willowbrook. My pension and Frank's life insurance provided enough for me to live without financial worries, or so I thought. Our only daughter Jessica married Mark Wilson 8 years ago. They seemed perfect together. She was a kindergarten teacher with a gentle spirit, and he worked in finance, always dressed in crisp suits and speaking with such confidence about investment opportunities and market trends. 2 years after their wedding, they blessed me with twin granddaughters, Emma and Lily, who quickly became the center of my world. After Frank passed away, I struggled with more than grief. The practical aspects of life suddenly felt overwhelming. Frank had always handled our finances, our taxes, the household repairs. Mark noticed my confusion while sorting through insurance paperwork and offered to help. "Carly, you shouldn't have to deal with this alone," he said, his voice full of concern. "Let me help organize these accounts for you. This is what I do professionally, after all." His offer seemed like a blessing at the time. I was grateful for his expertise and the way he simplified complex financial matters for me. Within weeks, he had reorganized my filing system, set up online banking for me, and even created a budget spreadsheet that tracked every expense. "Just to keep things simple," Mark explained, "I think it would help if I had access to your accounts. Not to make any decisions, just to monitor things and make sure everything's running smoothly. Plus, if anything ever happened to you, someone would need to help Jessica handle things." It made sense at the time. I added him as an authorized user, comforted by the thought that my family was looking out for me. He even installed banking apps on my phone and taught me how to check my balance. But I still preferred the paper statements that came monthly, carefully filing them away after review. About a year ago, I noticed small discrepancies in my accounts. Nothing major, $50 here, $75 there. I mentioned it to Mark once during Sunday dinner. "Those are probably just the automatic payment processing fees," he explained, spooning more mashed potatoes onto his plate. "Banks these days nickel and dime you for everything. I'll look into it if you want, but it's pretty standard." I nodded, embarrassed that I didn't understand modern banking. As the months passed, I noticed other small withdrawals but chalked it up to my own forgetfulness. Maybe I had bought something and forgotten. Maybe the costs of my prescriptions had increased. After decades of managing a household with Frank, I was ashamed to admit how quickly I'd lost confidence in my own financial abilities. Last Tuesday, I decided to organize my filing cabinet and began reviewing the past year of statements more carefully. What I discovered made my stomach drop. In addition to the small withdrawals, there were regular transfers, $500, sometimes $1,000, to an account number I didn't recognize. I spread the statements across my dining room table, adding up the figures with a shaking hand. Over $45,000 had disappeared from my retirement savings over the past 18 months. The money I had specifically set aside for Emma and Lily's college fund was nearly gone. My hands trembled as I reached for the phone to call the bank. The customer service representative confirmed my worst fears. The transfers had been authorized using my card and PIN. "Not a fraud case," she explained sympathetically, "but an authorized user making withdrawals." My heart sank as I realized what this meant. Mark had been systematically stealing from me, his children's grandmother, his wife's mother. I hung up the phone and sat in silence, watching dust particles float through the afternoon sunlight, streaming through my windows. A lifetime of trust shattered in a single afternoon. The next morning, I drove to my bank branch, determined to understand exactly what had happened. "Janet, A manager in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude took me into her office after hearing my faltering explanation. "Mrs. Reynolds, I want you to know you're not alone in this situation," she said, her voice lowered. "Financial exploitation of seniors is more common than people realize, even within families." I flinched at the word exploitation. It seemed too harsh, too clinical for what was happening in my family. But as Janet pulled up the records on her computer, the evidence became undeniable. "These transfers have been going to an account at First National," Janet explained, turning her monitor so I could see. "I can't tell you the account holder's information, but I can print these records for you to take to the police if you decide to file a report." "The police?" I whispered. The idea of criminally accusing my son-in-law made me physically ill. Janet reached across her desk and patted my hand. "Before you make any decisions, I'd recommend securing what's left of your funds. We can close these accounts today and open new ones that no one else can access." I nodded numbly and spent the next 2 hours with Janet, opening new accounts and redirecting my pension deposits. By lunchtime, I had new account numbers, a new debit card, and a terrible weight on my shoulders. What would this mean for Jessica? For the twins? Instead of going home, I drove to the local library and used their computer to search for the mysterious account information. Through some online banking detective work and with help from a librarian who sensed my distress, I discovered the account belonged to a joint holder, Mark Wilson and Tiffany Mercer. Who was Tiffany Mercer? The name meant nothing to me. With shaking fingers, I typed her name into a search engine along with our town name. Social media revealed a woman in her early 30s, blonde and polished, who worked as a real estate agent across town. Her profile showed expensive tastes, designer clothes, luxury vacations, a sports car. Recent photos showed her wearing a diamond bracelet that looked eerily similar to one my late husband had given me, a family heirloom I'd noticed missing from my jewelry box months ago, but had assumed I'd misplaced. I felt physically sick. Not only was Mark stealing from me, but he appeared to be involved with another woman. What did Jessica know? What about my granddaughters? I drove to Jessica's house, arriving just after the school bus dropped off the twins. They ran to hug me, their identical blonde ponytails bouncing, while Jessica looked surprised to see me unannounced. "Mom, everything okay?" she asked, ushering the girls inside for their snack. "We need to talk," I said quietly. Alone. After settling the twins with apple slices and a cartoon, Jessica and I sat at her kitchen island. I took a deep breath and showed her the bank statements. I found some concerning transactions. I began carefully. "Large sums of money have been transferred out of my accounts. Mark has been the only other person with access." I expected shock, disbelief, perhaps even anger at the accusation. Instead, Jessica's face crumpled, and she looked away. "You knew?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. Jessica's shoulders shook as she began to cry. "Not everything," she managed between sobs. "He told me he was borrowing small amounts to help with investments that would benefit all of us. He said you had agreed." "Jessica, it's over $45,000, I said, sliding the statements toward her. "Almost all of the girls' college fund." Her face went pale. "That's not possible." "He said it was just a few thousand to help with a work investment." I hesitated before asking the next question. "Do you know someone named Tiffany Mercer?" Jessica's reaction told me everything. Her hands gripped the countertop so hard her knuckles went white. "How do you know that name?" she whispered. "The money has been going to a joint account between Mark and this woman." Jessica stood up abruptly and walked to the window, hugging herself tightly. "He said she was a client, that they were working on investment properties together." She turned to face me, tears streaming down her face. "I found text messages months ago. He swore it was over, that it was a mistake." I moved to embrace my daughter, but she stepped back, pulling out her phone with shaking hands. She scrolled through messages and held the screen up for me to see. "If your mother causes any problems about the money, remember I can take the girls. Courts favor fathers more than people think, especially when I can prove your depression makes you an unfit mother." Family money is family money, don't forget that. The message from Mark was dated just 3 weeks ago. I felt cold rage building inside me as I read more messages. Systematic emotional abuse and financial threats spanning months. He knows I had postpartum depression after the twins, Jessica whispered. He's been holding it over me for years, threatening to use it against me if I ever tried to leave. And now he's taking your money too. I pulled my daughter into my arms as she finally broke down completely. Over her shoulder, I could see Emma and Lily watching us from the doorway, their little faces confused and frightened. In that moment, everything changed. This wasn't just about my stolen retirement funds anymore. This was about protecting my daughter and granddaughters from a man who had betrayed us all. Jessica and I spent the weekend developing a careful plan. Mark was away on what he claimed was a business trip to Atlanta, giving us precious time without his watchful presence. First things first, I said, sitting at my dining room table with Jessica. The twins were upstairs in my guest room, having an impromptu sleepover with their grandmother. We need professional help. Through a senior services referral, we connected with Patricia Garcia, an attorney specializing in elder financial abuse and family law. She agreed to meet us Saturday morning, listening intently as I explained the situation. What you're describing is both elder financial abuse and domestic emotional abuse, Patricia explained, her expression serious but compassionate. The good news is you've already taken the first important step by securing your remaining assets with new accounts. Patricia outlined our options, from criminal charges to civil recovery. She helped me file a police report documenting the unauthorized transfers, carefully explaining that this created an official record even if I ultimately decided not to press charges. And Jessica, Patricia continued, turning to my daughter, these text messages constitute evidence of emotional abuse and coercion. They'll be extremely relevant in divorce and custody proceedings. Jessica flinched at the word divorce, but nodded resolutely. He'll be back on Monday, Jessica said quietly. He texted that his meetings wrapped up early. Then we need to move quickly, Patricia advised. Jessica, do you have access to your joint financial records? We need to understand exactly what assets and debts exist in your marriage. That afternoon, while the twins napped, Jessica and I sat side by side at her computer, logging into accounts she rarely checked. What we discovered was worse than we imagined. Mom, I had no idea, Jessica whispered, scrolling through statement after statement. There are credit cards here I never knew existed, all maxed out. Loans I never signed for. The screen showed nearly $70,000 in debt spread across multiple accounts. Monthly minimum payments were being made from their joint checking account, the same account where Jessica's teaching salary was deposited before she became a stay-at-home mom. He's been using my income to pay the minimum on debts I never knew about, Jessica said, her voice hollow. Patricia had warned us to look for signs of gambling addiction, and we found them. Regular cash withdrawals at casino ATMs, online gambling transactions thinly disguised as business services. But the most shocking discovery came when Jessica found emails regarding a mortgage application for my house. He was planning to convince you to refinance your paid-off home, Jessica said, showing me the email Mark had drafted but apparently never sent. He wrote that he'd help you unlock the equity in your home for investment opportunities. He was going to take out a loan against your house, Mom. We spent Sunday gathering documents, making copies, and securing them both digitally and physically. Jessica packed essential items for herself and the twins, moving them temporarily to my house under the guise of a special grandmother week while she deep-cleaned their home. That evening, as the twins played in my backyard, Jessica and I sat on my porch swing, emotionally exhausted. I keep thinking about when we met, Jessica said quietly. He was so charming, so attentive. Everyone thought I was lucky to find someone so stable and successful. Love blinds us sometimes, I said, taking her hand. I thought he hung the moon too. Jessica squeezed my hand. I'm so sorry, Mom. I should have seen what was happening. We both missed the signs, I assured her, but we're seeing clearly now. After putting the twins to bed, Jessica and I rehearsed what we would say when Mark inevitably discovered he could no longer access my accounts. We decided I would confront him alone initially. My house, my money, my stand to take. He'll try to manipulate you, Jessica warned. He's very good at making you doubt yourself, at twisting things until you feel like you're the one who's wrong. I've had 68 years of practice at standing my ground, I replied, with more confidence than I felt. And this time, I have evidence. Monday morning arrived with a nervous energy in the house. Jessica took the twins to school, then returned to wait upstairs, out of sight but within earshot. We had decided it would be safer if Mark initially believed he was only dealing with me. At 11:30, my doorbell rang. Through the window, I could see Mark's silver sedan in my driveway. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and opened the door to face the man who had betrayed my family's trust in the worst possible way. Mark burst through my door without waiting for an invitation. His normally perfectly combed hair disheveled, his tie loosened at his neck. "What the hell did you do, Carly?" he demanded, pacing my living room like a caged animal. "I was at the ATM this morning trying to withdraw cash for a client meeting, and my card was declined." "Declined?" "I called the bank and they said the accounts had been closed." I stood calmly by my fireplace, where family photos chronicled happier times. "I decided to make some changes to my banking arrangements," I said evenly. Mark stopped pacing and stared at me, seemingly noticing my composure for the first time. His expression shifted quickly from rage to a practiced concern that I now recognized as manipulation. "Carly," he said, his voice softening, "I'm worried about you. Making sudden financial changes at your age can be risky. Why didn't you consult me first? You know I'm only trying to help manage things for you and Jessica." "Manage things?" I repeated. "Is that what you call transferring $45,000 of my retirement savings to an account I knew nothing about?" His face paled slightly before he composed himself. "I don't know what you're talking about. I've been making some investments on your behalf, yes, but everything is properly documented. If you just told me you were concerned, I could have shown you the paperwork." "The paperwork for your gambling debts?" I asked quietly. "Or the paperwork for the gifts you've been buying Tiffany Mercer?" The name hit him like a physical blow. His mask of concern vanished, replaced by cold calculation. "You've been spying on me?" he asked, his voice dangerously low. "Going through my personal affairs?" "No, Mark. I've been investigating the theft of my own money," he laughed, a harsh sound without humor. "Theft? That's a serious accusation, Carly. Family helps family. You've been living quite comfortably while Jessica had to give up her career to raise the girls. The way I see it, I was just ensuring some financial balance in the family. By stealing from your children's college fund? By taking out loans in Jessica's name without her knowledge?" I countered, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. Mark's expression darkened. "You've been talking to Jessica about this? Filling her head with your confused accusations?" He stepped toward me. "Are you out of your mind? I nearly passed out at the ATM. Do you have any idea what you've done? Those funds were allocated for important investments. The only thing I've done is protect what's left of my retirement," I replied, standing my ground. "And yes, Jessica knows everything now. About the money, about the loans, about Tiffany." At the mention of Tiffany again, Mark's demeanor changed completely. The pretense of the concerned son-in-law vanished. His face contorted with rage as he advanced toward me. "You stupid old woman," he snarled. "You have no idea what you've done. That money was keeping everything afloat. Without it, everything falls apart." "Your gambling debts, you mean?" I asked. He laughed bitterly. "You think you know everything now? You've barely scratched the surface. Jessica is weak. She always has been. She needs me to make the hard decisions. And you? You should be grateful I've managed your money all these years. Frank left you with less than you think." "Don't you dare mention my husband's name," I said, my voice shaking with anger. Mark smirked, regaining his composure as he sensed he'd struck a nerve. Poor Frank, always thinking he had everything under control. He'd be so disappointed to see you now, throwing away family harmony over a few financial transfers. The cruelty of his words stung, but I refused to show it. "I want you to leave my house, Mark. Now. Not until we fix this mess you've created," he insisted. You're going to call the bank right now and add me back to those accounts. That's not going to happen. It absolutely is, he said, pulling out his phone. Then you're going to come with me to the bank tomorrow to discuss a small loan against your house. Nothing major, just enough to tide us over until my investments mature. Investments? I repeated incredulously. Is that what you call slot machines and roulette wheels? His eyes narrowed. Careful, Carly. Very careful. Remember, I'm the one who takes care of this family. I'm the one who makes sure Jessica and the girls have everything they need. By threatening to take my granddaughters away if Jessica questions your financial management? I asked. Mark went very still. She showed you those messages. It wasn't a question. That was a private conversation between husband and wife during a difficult time. It was blackmail, I corrected him. And emotional abuse. He stepped closer, towering over me. You've really overstepped this time. Do you have any idea what this will do to the girls? Breaking up their home because their grandmother suddenly decided to play detective? The girls deserve better than a father who steals their future and threatens their mother, I replied, refusing to back down. Mark's eyes darted around the room, perhaps looking for Jessica or evidence of our investigation. Here's what's going to happen, he said with forced calm. You're going to fix this banking mistake. We're going to forget this conversation, and things will go back to normal, for the sake of the girls. That's not going to happen, Mark, I repeated firmly. His face flushed with renewed anger. You don't get to decide that. This family was doing fine before you started meddling. Do you know what Jessica will be without me? A depressed, unemployed single mother with no recent work experience. Is that what you want for your daughter? I want her free from your manipulation and abuse, I answered. Abuse? He scoffed. Jessica needs guidance, structure. Without me, she falls apart. You know about her depression. Do you really think she can handle raising the twins alone? The courts will take one look at her history and give me full custody. And then you'll move them all away, right? I asked. Clear across the country where I can't meddle anymore? Mark's expression changed, surprise flickering across his features before he controlled it. What are you talking about? I know about the job interviews in California, I said, taking a calculated risk based on emails Jessica had found. Planning to make a fresh start with a clean slate? Away from gambling debts and angry investors? He recovered quickly. Any career opportunities I explore are for the benefit of my family. Sometimes a fresh start is exactly what a family needs. A fresh start with Tiffany? I asked pointedly. Something in Mark snapped. Yes, with Tiffany, he shouted, his careful facade crumbling completely. You want the truth? Fine. Tiffany understands me. She supports my ambitions instead of dragging me down with neediness and family obligations. The plan was perfect. Use your equity to clear the debts. Move everyone west. Start fresh. Jessica would have adjusted eventually. I stared at him, shocked by his casual cruelty. The girls would have had a better life in California anyway, he continued, pacing again. Better schools, better opportunities. All I needed was a few more months to get everything in place. And you've ruined it all with your meddling. From the staircase came the sound of a floorboard creaking. Mark whirled around to see Jessica standing there, her face white with shock and pain. Jessica, he said, immediately shifting back to a gentler tone. How long have you been standing there, honey? Long enough, she replied. Her voice stronger than I'd heard it in years. The girls would have a better life? Without their grandmother? Without their home and friends? With a father who steals and lies? Mark's expression hardened. You don't understand the pressure I've been under. The financial responsibilities of providing for this family while you've had the luxury of staying home. The luxury you insisted on, Jessica countered, descending the stairs to stand beside me. Even when I wanted to go back to teaching. Because our children deserved a full-time mother? He shot back. And look how well that turned out. You can barely handle them without falling apart. I put my arm around Jessica's shoulders protectively. You need to leave now, Mark. He laughed bitterly. I'm not going anywhere without my daughters. Where are they? Upstairs? Emma! Lily! He called loudly. They're not here, Jessica said firmly. They're safe. Mark's face darkened with fury. You don't get to keep my daughters from me. I'll have my lawyer contact you both. We'll see how quickly a judge grants me emergency custody when I explain how the two of you conspired to alienate them from their father. He started toward the stairs, apparently to search the house, but Jessica blocked his path. Stop it, Mark. The girls are at school. You need to leave. Now. Or what? He challenged, looming over her. Or, I call the police and show them this, I said, holding up my phone. I've been recording this entire conversation. Mark froze, then lunged for my phone. I stepped back quickly, finger hovering over a contact labeled emergency. You've been recording me without consent? That's illegal, he sputtered. Not in this state, Jessica replied. And not when you're threatening us in my mother's home. Mark looked from Jessica to me, calculation evident in his eyes. This is all a misunderstanding that's gotten out of hand, he said, attempting to regain his composure. We're family. We can work this out privately, without involving outsiders. It's too late for that, I told him. We know about everything, Mark. The gambling, the loans, Tiffany, the plans to move away. All of it. You think you know everything? He laughed harshly. You have no idea. California isn't just about a job opportunity. Tiffany is pregnant. 3 months along now. I was going to tell you, Jessica, once everything was settled. Jessica staggered as if physically struck, grabbing the stair railing for support. I moved to steady her, glaring at Mark with a fury I hadn't felt in years. Get out, I demanded. Get out of my house right now. Mark stared at us both, seeming to realize he had finally gone too far. This isn't over, he warned, backing toward the door. Those are still my daughters, and that's still my wife. I have rights. Rights you forfeited when you stole from us and betrayed us, Jessica said, her voice shaking but determined. Leave, Mark. We'll communicate through lawyers from now on. For a moment, I thought he might refuse, might escalate the situation further. Then, with a last venomous glare, he yanked open the front door and stormed out. We watched through the window as he got into his car, slammed the door, and peeled out of the driveway. Jessica collapsed onto the bottom stair, her body racked with silent sobs. I sat beside her, holding her tightly as 3 years of deception and manipulation came crashing down around us. He's having a baby with her, Jessica whispered. All this time, while I was trying to save our marriage, I know, sweetheart, I murmured, stroking her hair as I had when she was a child. I know. But we're going to get through this together. Outside, the spring sunshine continued to shine brightly, oblivious to the storm that had just passed through our lives. And somewhere in the distance, I heard the faint sound of a school bus, bringing Emma and Lily home to the new reality we now faced. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of activity. Patricia, our lawyer, helped Jessica file for an emergency temporary custody order and a restraining order based on Mark's threatening behavior and the recorded conversation. The judge granted both, giving Jessica temporary full custody of the twins, with Mark limited to supervised visitation until a full hearing could be scheduled. We changed the locks on both houses. Patricia filed formal complaints about the financial abuse with both the police and Adult Protective Services. We met with the twins' school administrators to update their emergency contact information and alert them to the situation. Throughout it all, Jessica moved through the tasks with a quiet determination that made my heart swell with pride. The hardest part was explaining the situation to Emma and Lily. Jessica and I sat them down in my living room the evening after the confrontation, struggling to find age-appropriate words. Girls, Jessica began carefully. Mommy and Daddy are going to be living in different houses for a while. Like a sleepover? Emma asked, her small face serious. Sort of, Jessica replied. But for longer. Mommy and Daddy need some time apart to work through some grown-up problems. Did you have a fight? Lily asked, always the more perceptive of the two. Jessica looked to me helplessly, tears welling in her eyes. Your mom and dad have had some disagreements, I explained gently. And sometimes when grown-ups have big disagreements, they need space to figure things out. But the most important thing for both of you to know is that everyone loves you very much. Will Daddy come back? Emma asked, bottom lip trembling. You'll still see Daddy, Jessica assured them. But things will be a little different for a while. The girls had more questions, of course, but we kept our answers simple and reassuring. That night, I heard Jessica crying softly in her old bedroom after the twins had fallen asleep. The next day, Mark began his campaign of manipulation. He sent Jessica dozens of text messages, alternating between self-pity, declarations of love, and veiled threats. He called my house repeatedly until we blocked his number. He even sent flowers with a card claiming this was all a terrible misunderstanding. When these tactics failed, he escalated. He contacted mutual friends and family members, spinning a story about Jessica having a mental health crisis, and me enabling her delusions because I was suffering from early dementia. Some believed him. Mark had always been charismatic and convincing. Others were more skeptical and reached out to us directly. By Friday, 5 days after the confrontation, Mark had shifted strategies again. He appeared at my house just as Jessica was leaving to pick up the twins from school. "You're violating the restraining order," she said through the barely open door, her phone in hand ready to call the police. "I just want to talk," Mark said, his voice pleading, his appearance deliberately disheveled to evoke sympathy. 5 minutes, Jessica. Don't we owe our marriage that much? You owe our daughters their college fund, she replied coldly. You owe my mother her retirement savings. You owe me the truth, which you never gave until you were caught. People make mistakes, he insisted, his foot preventing her from closing the door completely. I got in over my head, but I can fix this. I've already contacted a gambling addiction counselor. I'm getting help. Jessica hesitated, and I could see the years of emotional manipulation working on her. I moved to stand beside her at the door. The restraining order says you need to stay 500 feet away, I reminded him firmly. The police have already been notified that you're here. That was a bluff, but Mark didn't know that. He glanced nervously down the street. This isn't over, he said, his pleading tone giving way to anger. Those are my daughters too. I have rights. Rights you'll need to exercise through proper legal channels, I replied, closing the door firmly and locking it. Jessica leaned against the wall, shaking. He almost had me, she whispered. For a second there, I almost believed him again. That's how abusers work, I told her, taking her hands in mine. They make you doubt your own judgment. But we know the truth now, and we have evidence. That evening, after the twins were asleep, Jessica and I sat on my back porch, watching fireflies begin to appear in the gathering dusk. Mom, Jessica said quietly, what if he's right? What if I can't do this on my own? I haven't worked in 6 years. I don't even know if my teaching certification is still valid. First of all, you're not on your own, I reminded her. I'm right here, and I'm not going anywhere. Second, you are so much stronger than he ever gave you credit for. And third, practical problems have practical solutions. If you need to renew your certification, we'll figure out how. If you need to find a different career, we'll explore options. But the money, she protested. He's left me with all this debt, the mortgage, the credit cards. We'll work with Patricia on that too, I assured her. Debt incurred through fraud or coercion might not be your responsibility. And I have some savings left. Jessica looked alarmed. Mom, no. He's taken enough from you already. That money was always meant for you and the girls anyway, I said firmly. Frank would want me to use it this way. We sat in companionable silence for a while, listening to the chirp of crickets and distant children playing in the neighborhood. I keep thinking about what he said, Jessica finally admitted. About Tiffany being pregnant, my heart ached for my daughter. Despite everything Mark had done, this betrayal seemed to cut the deepest. I'm sorry, sweetheart, I said, squeezing her hand. The thing is, Jessica continued, I'm not even sure I'm sad about the marriage ending. I think I'm more sad about losing the idea of what I thought we had. Does that make sense? Perfect sense, I assured her. You're mourning the future you thought you were building, not the reality of what it had become. Jessica nodded slowly. You know what scares me the most? How easily he fooled us all. Everyone thought he was this perfect husband and father, The neighbors, our friends, even you. Even you, I added gently. Yes, she acknowledged. Even me. Maybe especially me. She looked up at the emerging stars. How do I ever trust my judgment again? How do I protect the girls from men like their father? Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. We exchanged alarmed glances, both immediately thinking of Mark. Stay here, I said, rising carefully. I'll check who it is. Through the peephole, I saw not Mark, but an older couple I recognized immediately. Eleanor and Richard Wilson, Mark's parents. They had always been kind to Jessica and adored their granddaughters, though we saw them infrequently since they lived 2 states away. I opened the door cautiously. Eleanor, Richard. This is a surprise. Carly, Eleanor said, her face lined with worry. We're so sorry to drop in unannounced. Is Jessica here? We need to talk to both of you. Mom? Who is it? Jessica called, appearing in the hallway. She froze when she saw her in-laws. Richard? Eleanor? What are you doing here? Mark called us, Richard explained, his voice grave. He told us his version of events, but something didn't add up. We drove down to hear your side directly. I hesitated, unsure whether to trust their intentions. They had always seemed like decent people, but they had raised Mark, after all. May we come in? Eleanor asked. Please. We just want to understand what's happening. Carly, Eleanor said, her face lined with worry. We're so sorry to drop in unannounced. Is Jessica here? We need to talk to both of you. Mark claims Jessica is having a breakdown, Richard said directly, and that you, Carly, are suffering from confusion that's leading to false accusations. He says you've turned Jessica against him and are keeping him from his daughters. That's not what's happening, Jessica replied, her voice surprisingly steady. Would you like to hear the truth? For the next hour, Jessica and I laid out the whole story. The financial theft, the gambling addiction, the emotional manipulation, the loans, and finally, the revelation about Tiffany and the pregnancy. We showed them bank statements, screenshots of threatening texts, and played a portion of the recorded confrontation. As the evidence mounted, Eleanor began to cry quietly while Richard's face grew increasingly grim. We had no idea, Eleanor whispered when we finished. All these years we thought, he always seemed so successful, put together, Jessica supplied. That's the image he cultivated very carefully. Richard removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes wearily. We should have seen the signs. The money problem started years ago, in college. We bailed him out several times before he met you, Jessica. But he promised he had changed, and we wanted to believe him. There were other women before, too, Eleanor admitted reluctantly. We thought marriage had settled him down. You couldn't have known, Jessica said gently, surprising me with her compassion toward them. We should have warned you, Richard insisted. But we were so happy when he seemed to have turned his life around with you. And then the twins came, and he seemed like such a proud father. Eleanor reached across the coffee table to take Jessica's hands. We want you to know that we believe you. Both of you. And we want to help. If you'll let us. Jessica's eyes filled with tears. The girls love you both so much. I would never want to keep them from you. And we love them, Eleanor assured her. And you, dear. You've been the best thing that ever happened to our son, even if he couldn't recognize it. Richard cleared his throat, clearly emotional but determined. We've made a decision. We're prepared to testify on your behalf if this goes to court. About Mark's history, his past behavior patterns. It won't be easy, testifying against our own son, but the girls deserve better. You all do. The unexpected allyship of Mark's own parents felt like the first ray of sunlight after a long, dark storm. Jessica broke down then, accepting Eleanor's embrace while Richard awkwardly patted her shoulder. I slipped into the kitchen to give them privacy and to collect my own emotions. As I stood at the sink, staring out at the night sky, I felt a strange mixture of grief and hope. Our family had been fractured by betrayal, but perhaps these broken pieces could be reassembled into something new, something stronger. When I returned with a tray of tea, I found Jessica sitting between her in-laws, looking exhausted but somehow lighter. "We've been talking," she explained. "Eleanor and Richard want to stay in town for a while, to help with the girls, and to be here for the court dates if needed." "You're welcome here," I said sincerely. "There's plenty of room." "We couldn't impose," Eleanor began, but I waved away her protest. "This house has always been too big for just me," I insisted. "And the girls would love having you close by during all this upheaval." As we made plans for the coming days, I observed Jessica closely. For the first time in years, she was speaking with confidence, making decisions without constantly seeking approval. The road ahead would not be easy, but watching my daughter reclaim her strength, I knew we would find our way through. Later that night, after everyone had retired to their rooms, I sat alone in my kitchen, thinking about Frank. How I wished he could see his daughter now, standing tall in the face of adversity. How I wished he could know his granddaughters, who carried his kind eyes and stubborn chin. "We're going to be okay, Frank," I whispered to the quiet house. "I promise you that." And for the first time since this ordeal began, I truly believed it. The following weeks unfolded in a pattern of legal meetings, therapy appointments, and establishing new routines. Jessica filed for divorce, citing financial fraud and emotional abuse. With Patricia's guidance and the evidence we had gathered, the court maintained the temporary orders giving Jessica primary custody while the case proceeded. Mark's initial hearing for the financial exploitation charges resulted in strict conditions. He surrendered his passport, was ordered to stay away from both our homes, and had to check in with a court officer weekly. His supervised visitations with the twins began awkwardly, with a court-appointed monitor present. The girls returned from these visits confused and emotional, sometimes angry, sometimes sad. Their therapist assured us this was normal and helped them process their complicated feelings. Behind the scenes, the financial unraveling continued. Patricia connected Jessica with a financial counselor specializing in divorce cases involving financial abuse. Together, they documented the extent of the damage. Nearly $70,000 in credit card debt, most of it in Jessica's name. The mortgage on their family home, now 2 months behind in payments, and the missing $45,000 from my retirement accounts. The good news, Patricia explained during one of our meetings, is that we have solid evidence of fraud for many of these debts. Jessica never authorized or knew about several of the credit cards. We can dispute those completely. The mortgage was more complicated. Both Jessica and Mark had signed those papers, though Jessica admitted she had never read the terms carefully, trusting Mark's assurances about affordability. "I was such a fool," she lamented one evening as we reviewed paperwork at my dining table. "You were a trusting wife," Eleanor corrected gently. She and Richard had stayed true to their word, remaining in town and proving to be invaluable supports. There's no shame in that. Richard, who had worked in banking before retirement, spent hours helping Jessica understand her financial situation and developing a plan forward. "The house is underwater," he explained, using a term I'd never heard before. "The mortgage is higher than the current market value. Foreclosure might actually be the cleanest option, allowing Jessica to make a fresh start without that burden." The idea of Jessica losing her family home felt like another victory for Mark, but the practical reality was undeniable. The house represented a financial anchor she couldn't support on a single income, especially one she was still working to establish. Jessica's job search began tentatively. Her teaching certification had indeed lapsed, requiring courses and testing to reinstate. In the meantime, she found part-time work at the twins' school as a teacher's aide, allowing her to align her schedule with the girls and begin rebuilding her confidence. Mark, true to form, continued his campaign of manipulation. When sympathy and threats failed, he tried financial pressure, canceling family credit cards that Jessica still used for groceries and household expenses. When supervised visitations didn't give him the control he wanted, he sometimes canceled at the last minute, leaving the twins disappointed and confused. "Daddy says he can't see us because Mommy and Grandma made bad rules," Emma reported after one phone call with Mark. "Daddy says when we move to California we'll have a swimming pool," Lily added. Jessica and I exchanged concerned glances. Despite court orders prohibiting him from discussing the case with the children, Mark was clearly attempting to turn the girls against us and continuing to dangle the California fantasy. We reported these incidents to Patricia, who added them to the growing file documenting Mark's behavior. The family court judge took a dim view of such tactics, further restricting Mark's communication with the twins to supervised calls and visits only. 6 weeks after our initial confrontation, we received unexpected news. Patricia called early one morning, her voice urgent. "Mark's been arrested," she informed us. "Not for the financial exploitation case. That's still proceeding. This is new. He apparently tried to withdraw funds from an investment account using forged documents. The financial institution reported it as attempted fraud." Jessica sank into a kitchen chair, her face pale. "What does this mean for the divorce? For the girls?" "It strengthens our case considerably," Patricia explained. "But it also means more upheaval. There will be criminal proceedings, possible jail time. We need to prepare the girls for that possibility." That evening, after the twins were asleep, Jessica, Eleanor, Richard, and I sat in my living room, processing this new development. "I feel like I should be glad," Jessica admitted, staring into her untouched cup of tea. "After everything he's done, he's facing consequences. But all I feel is sad. Sad for the girls. Sad for the life I thought we had. Sad even for Mark." "That's because you have compassion," Eleanor said, reaching over to squeeze Jessica's hand. "Despite everything, that hasn't been taken from you." "Mark called us from jail," Richard said quietly. "He wanted us to post bail." "Did you?" I asked, trying to keep judgment from my voice. Richard shook his head. "We told him we love him, but we won't enable his behavior anymore. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to say to my son." Eleanor wiped away tears. "He accused us of betrayal, of choosing Jessica over him. As if love is a competition, not a commitment." "What about Tiffany?" Jessica asked suddenly. "Has anyone heard anything about her?" Richard and Eleanor exchanged glances. "She visited him at the jail, according to the visitor log," Richard finally said. "But our attorney has discovered that she's listed the father of her baby as unknown on prenatal medical forms." Jessica gave a bitter laugh. "Of course. She's probably figured out he's not the meal ticket she thought." The weeks continued to pass. Summer arrived, bringing warm days and the end of the school year. The twins adjusted to their new normal with the resilience of children, though they still had difficult days and nights. Jessica began online courses to reinstate her teaching certification, studying late into the night after the girls were asleep. Mark's criminal case proceeded slowly through the system. He eventually accepted a plea deal for the fraudulent withdrawal attempt, resulting in probation and mandatory financial counseling rather than jail time. The case regarding my stolen retirement funds was folded into the divorce proceedings as part of the financial settlement. One bright spot emerged in late June. Patricia called with news about the credit card debts. "The credit bureau investigation came back," she reported triumphantly. 3 of the 5 credit cards have been confirmed as fraudulent applications. The companies are removing those debts from Jessica's credit record completely and pursuing Mark separately for repayment. It was a financial reprieve of nearly $40,000. For the first time, Jessica allowed herself to believe she might not be financially crippled forever by Mark's actions. Richard and Eleanor eventually returned to their home in Minnesota but visited frequently. They established a trust fund for the twins' education, replacing the college fund Mark had depleted. This gesture moved me deeply. They had no legal obligation to make up for their son's theft, but their moral compass guided them to make things right for their granddaughters. By late July, Jessica had made the difficult decision to let the family home go into foreclosure. We spent a weekend helping her sort through belongings, deciding what to keep, what to sell, and what to donate. The process was both painful and cathartic. "I keep finding evidence of his deception," Jessica said, holding up a stack of hidden bank statements she'd discovered in Mark's home office. "Even now, there are still surprises. Focus on what you're keeping, not what you're leaving behind," I advised, watching her carefully select meaningful items for her new life. We found a small rental house, just 3 blocks from mine. A 2-bedroom cottage with a fenced yard where the girls could play safely. The landlord, a widower who attended my church, offered a reduced rent when he learned of Jessica's situation. "My daughter went through something similar," he explained gruffly. "Pay it forward someday when you're back on your feet." In August, just before the twins were to start first grade, Mark's parents arranged a family meeting with Patricia present. They had news they wanted to share face to face. "We've made some decisions," Richard began solemnly. "Given everything that's happened, we're revising our will and estate plans." "That's not necessary," Jessica began. But Eleanor raised a hand to stop her. "We're not disinheriting Mark entirely," she explained. "But we've restructured things. The bulk of our estate will now go into trusts for Emma and Lily, with you as trustee, Jessica. Mark will receive a smaller portion, managed by a professional trustee who will ensure it can't be accessed for gambling. We love our son," Richard added, his voice rough with emotion. "But we won't enable his destructive behavior. And we want to make sure our granddaughters are protected." Jessica was overwhelmed by their generosity and insight. "Thank you for loving them so well," she said simply. As summer faded into fall, our new normal gradually took shape. Jessica completed her recertification courses and secured a full-time position teaching third grade at a school near her rental house. The twins adapted to their new home and routine, thriving in first grade. Mark maintained his supervised visitation but showed decreasing interest as the restrictions continued and his attempts at manipulation failed. One crisp October evening, as Jessica and I sat on my porch watching the twins play in a pile of autumn leaves, she turned to me with unexpected tears in her eyes. "I never thanked you properly," she said quietly. "For what?" I asked, genuinely puzzled. "For believing me. For standing with me. For being brave enough to confront Mark when I couldn't." She took my hand, squeezing it tightly. "You saved us, Mom. All of us." I shook my head, watching my granddaughter's joyful play. "We saved ourselves. Together. And look what we've built from the ashes." The sun set golden over the neighborhood, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. Not everything was perfect. There were still court dates ahead, financial challenges to navigate, and emotional wounds still healing. But watching my daughter and granddaughters laugh together, free from the shadow of fear and manipulation, I knew we had already won the battle that mattered most. 6 months later, on a bright spring morning, I stood in my kitchen brewing coffee and watching the backyard burst with new life. Daffodils nodded in the gentle breeze, and the flowering dogwood I'd planted after Frank's passing was covered in delicate white blooms. So much had changed in a year. Jessica's divorce had been finalized 3 months ago, with terms heavily favoring her due to the documented financial and emotional abuse. Mark was ordered to pay child support and contribute to the twins' education fund, though we had limited expectations about his compliance. The criminal case regarding my stolen retirement funds had concluded with a restitution order, though I had received only a fraction of what was taken. Some losses couldn't be recovered with court orders, but some gains couldn't be measured in dollars, either. Jessica had flourished in her return to teaching, rediscovering her passion and confidence. Her colleagues valued her insight and dedication, and her principal had already discussed potential leadership opportunities for the following year. The financial counselor had helped her establish a workable budget and begin rebuilding her credit. She was even setting aside small amounts each month toward eventually buying a home of her own. Emma and Lily, now 7, had weathered the changes with remarkable resilience. They still had questions and occasional difficult emotions about their father, especially as his visits became increasingly sporadic. Their therapist helped them process these feelings, while we focused on creating stability and joy in their daily lives. They spent afternoons at my house after school, while Jessica finished her workday, filling my home with giggles and chatter that healed my heart in ways I hadn't known it needed healing. Mark's parents remained steadfast in their support, visiting monthly and maintaining regular video calls with the girls between visits. Their commitment to being positive grandparent figures, despite their son's failings, demonstrated a depth of character I deeply admired. As for Mark himself, he had moved to California after all, though without the family he had planned to take with him. We heard through Richard and Eleanor that he was working for a real estate investment firm and had limited contact even with them. Tiffany had indeed had a baby, a boy, But paternity testing had confirmed what she had apparently suspected. Mark was not the father. This news had reached us just last month, adding one final bitter twist to Mark's web of deception. The doorbell rang, interrupting my reflections. I opened it to find Jessica and the twins on my porch, all dressed in hiking clothes and carrying small backpacks. "Ready for our adventure, Grandma?" Emma asked excitedly. "Just let me grab my hat," I replied, smiling at their enthusiasm. Today marked a special occasion, the first withdrawal from the new education fund we had established for the twins. Not for college yet, of course, but for a week-long summer camp focused on science and nature that had captured their imagination. The brochures promised hiking, stargazing, basic chemistry experiments, and wildlife observation, all activities that aligned perfectly with the girls' boundless curiosity. We had decided to celebrate by taking them on a practice hike at the state park 30 miles from town. Jessica had prepared a picnic lunch, and I had researched the most child-friendly trails. It was a small thing, perhaps, but it represented something larger: our commitment to investing in the twins' future and creating joyful memories along the way. As we drove to the park, the girls chattering excitedly in the back seat, Jessica glanced at me with a serene smile that reached her eyes, something I hadn't seen in years. "I enrolled in that master's program we discussed," she said quietly, so the twins wouldn't overhear. "Just part-time, 2 evening classes per semester. Mom, the financial aid package came through. I can do this without touching our emergency fund." Pride swelled in my chest. "Jessica, that's wonderful. Frank would be so proud of you." "I think he would be proud of all of us," she replied, her eyes misting slightly. "For rebuilding. For not letting what happened define us." At the park, we hiked at the twins' pace, stopping to examine interesting rocks, unusual plants, and once, to our delight, a box turtle crossing the path. We picnicked by a small lake, watching swallows swoop over the water catching insects. "Grandma," Lily asked as she munched on her sandwich, "remember when Daddy used to live with us and would get really mad about money?" The question caught me off guard. The girls rarely initiated conversations about Mark these days. "I do remember that, sweetheart," I replied carefully. "Our therapist says that wasn't about us." Emma chimed in with the authority of a child repeating an adult's wisdom. "It was about Daddy's problems." "That's right," Jessica confirmed, smoothing Lily's hair. "Grown-up problems that weren't your responsibility. And now we have new money rules," Lily continued, clearly processing ideas from recent therapy sessions. "Like saving some and spending some and giving some." "That's right," I agreed, amazed at their developing financial awareness. Their therapist had suggested incorporating basic financial literacy appropriate to their age as a way of demystifying money after witnessing their father's destructive relationship with it. "And nobody yells about ATMs anymore," Emma added with satisfaction, returning to her lunch. That night, before turning in, I stood at my bedroom window gazing at the stars. Somewhere in that vast sky, I liked to think Frank was watching over us, perhaps with a knowing smile at how we had found our way through the darkest of times. That evening, after returning from our hike and getting the pleasantly tired twins settled for the night at Jessica's house, my daughter and I sat on her small porch with cups of tea. "I found the last of Mark's hidden statements yesterday," Jessica said, breaking our companionable silence. "At the bottom of an old filing cabinet I was cleaning out. More gambling debts I never knew about." "Are you going to report them to Patricia?" I asked. Jessica shook her head. "There's no point now. The divorce is final. The major debts have been addressed." Finding these just reminded me how completely he had separated his real life from the one he showed me. She sipped her tea thoughtfully. "You know what's strange? I feel almost grateful now." "Grateful?" I echoed, surprised. "Not for the theft or the lies," she clarified. "Never that. But grateful that we discovered the truth before it was too late. Before he took the girls away to California. Before he drained your accounts completely." She looked out at the darkening sky. "Grateful that I get to rebuild a life based on truth, not illusion." I understood what she meant. Despite the pain and upheaval, There was something profoundly liberating about facing reality, however harsh, rather than living inside a comfortable lie. The following weekend, I invited Jessica and the girls for a special dinner. Eleanor and Richard joined us via video call from Minnesota, raising glasses in a long-distance toast. I had news to share. I've decided to volunteer with the Senior Center's financial literacy program, I announced. They need people to help teach older adults about recognizing scams, managing online banking safely, and protecting their assets. Mom, that's perfect for you, Jessica exclaimed. I never thought my crash course in financial exploitation would have a silver lining, I admitted. But if my experience can help even one person avoid what happened to us, it gives some meaning to it all. Later, after everyone had gone home and the house was quiet, I sat in Frank's old armchair looking through our family photo album. There we were, so much younger. Frank and I holding newborn Jessica, Jessica's high school graduation, her wedding day with Mark, both looking radiantly happy, the twins as infants in their matching outfits. The path our lives had taken held so many unexpected turns, some joyful, some devastating. But looking at these captured moments, I realized that every experience, even the painful ones, had shaped us into who we were today. Jessica was stronger, wiser, more independent. The twins were developing healthy perspectives on trust, money, and family bonds. And I had discovered reserves of courage and resilience I never knew I possessed. Frank had always told me that the measure of a life well lived wasn't the absence of storms, but how you weathered them and who you became in the process. By that measure, perhaps we were doing just fine. The future stretched before us with new possibilities. Jessica's teaching career and education. The twins growing and discovering their talents. My own unexpected role as an advocate for financial literacy among seniors. None of these paths were what we had planned or expected, but they were authentic and meaningful, built on hard-won wisdom and genuine connections. That night, before turning in, I stood at my bedroom window gazing at the stars. Somewhere in that vast sky, I liked to think Frank was watching over us, perhaps with a knowing smile at how we had found our way through the darkest of times. We're going to be all right, I whispered to the night. Better than all right. We're going to thrive. And in my heart, I knew it was true. The journey hadn't been what any of us would have chosen, but the destination, this new life we were building together, was more genuine and precious than anything that had been lost along the way. Have you ever had to protect yourself or a loved one from financial abuse? The courage it takes to stand up against someone who's manipulating or taking advantage of you is tremendous, especially when they're family. I hope this story inspires you to trust your instincts when something doesn't feel right, and to remember that it's never too late to reclaim your power. Please share your thoughts in the comments, like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe for more stories of resilience and transformation, and share with someone who might need to hear this message. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, sometimes the greatest act of love is standing up for yourself and those who depend on you.